Well, hello everyone, it's me again. I'm back and we are going to be talking about building your first entity on top of Minecraft. So just joining on to the previous session where we talked about the foundation, we talked about packs and behavior packs and resource packs and all that kind of good fun stuff. Well, now we're going to do a little bit more detail on how you can build your first entity inside of Minecraft. So cool. Yeah, so just digging in a little real quick and those kinds of things. Entities are really at the heart of building custom things on top of Minecraft. It starts with, custom models and custom visuals for the Minecraft things that you're going to go build. But entities in Minecraft are also used for a number of interesting things. For example, they're used as pseudo blocks. So I talked about the Gray Wave turret defense add-on that we had before, and that was something that was designed for a tower defense thing where you've got these static towers in place. They look like blocks, but they're actually entities. And that's because entities support things like custom animations and custom behaviors, and they can shoot arrows and all that kind of good fun stuff. So in a lot of cases, and a lot of the things that you love inside of Minecraft, you'll see things that look like blocks, but they're actually entities that you can go work with. Sometimes some creators do some very advanced things with entities as well. They use them to store state, or they use them to store customizations, because you can actually key a lot of behaviors inside of Minecraft after what is happening with a mob or a monster or more. So lots of good fun stuff that you can do with entities and the like. As we talked about in the previous session and the intro session, when you think about something inside of Minecraft, you want to think in terms of the behavior or the server side of things and the resource or the client side of things. So on the behavior side of things, there's a lot of systems in place that we're going to cover for how entities work inside of Minecraft. And then on the resource side of things, of course, there's a lot of options for making your entity look really cool. There's an animation system, there's animation controllers, there's models, there's textures, there's render controllers. And of course, there's audio as well, so that you can customize how the audio works for your entity. So a lot of things to keep track of, and let's go dive in and see how this looks. At the heart of how a lot of things inside of Minecraft work is this concept of a component. A component is really this atomic element that adds a particular configuration or a behavior to a particular item. And Minecraft entities are the most powerful in Minecraft. There's over 170 different components for entities that you can add into it to customize how it works or how it behaves or those kinds of things. In fact, with 1.21.90 preview, I think, which came out on Tuesday, we added 3 new components that you can actually use on top of your Minecraft entities. Not every week that we add 3 new components that you can use, but it was a good week. And we added some more stuff for like leashability and for not having a mob work inside of peaceful and those kinds of things. So we're always adding more components. And these are the things that are really at the heart of how entities work. You can see a list of some here. I just started at A and got through A in terms of listing them. But you can see certain things like the attack component, which is, of course, very important for how an entity will decide to attack something else. So that's foundational and the like. We have a number of different AI components that describe the certain types of behaviors, AI, if you will, that an entity has. So for example, if you've got a zombie mob that has a melee attack, the behavior component for melee attack will describe certain things about how it decides to look for targets and how it decides to give up after a while, or what motivates it to go look for a target, those kinds of things. So there's lots of flavor and there's lots of interesting detail in the components of Minecraft. Now let's go see how these all work together. And this is going to be a little complicated, but bear with me. Okay, so the first thing that you have for your entity inside of your entity.json file is this initial configuration for entity.json. And so there it's just setting a bunch of different properties on the components that you want to be the foundation for how that entity will work. So certain things like maybe its display name or those kinds of things are at the core attributes for an entity. And if you look at items, which is another system that we'll talk about later today, items is just this. You can only just set the default state of components for an item, and that's about it. There's no conditional logic or state machines or all that kind of good fun stuff. Entities have a lot more sophistication for those kinds of things. So next up is the concept of component groups. This is just different configurations of components that you can add onto it. So for example, a lot of mobs inside of Minecraft have both like a child state and an adult state. And so there's like a component group for child, which will set that, maybe it's smaller in size and it's got different behaviors as a child versus when it grows up, then there's a different component group state for that, which will say that, which will like define all the properties for when that entity is an adult. Then there's this thing where certain actions can kind of influence and change the state of things inside of Minecraft. So as I was mentioning earlier, there's two component groups for a child and for adult. Maybe there's a trigger that after an entity has lived in the world for a certain time, this will trigger a set of behaviors that can transition an entity from the baby state into the adult state. It can also set properties. I know that was a question that was asked in the previous session. Properties are used to further conditionalize and configure how entities work, like that. And let's go. And then you can also interoperate and trigger different events through things like commands. So if you want to run a command that forces an entity to grow up from being a baby into being an adult, you would run that command to trigger an event, which will then kick off the setting of a component group that makes an entity an adult. And then there's a whole other system as well that I'm not going to go into called behavior animations and server animations. It's a little bit of a confusing name because they're not really animation related. It's just a different way to trigger events and commands on top of Minecraft entities. You should know that it exists. If you're super advanced, you can totally get into it, but it's just another system for doing that. And while I'm here, I should mention this language called Molang. Molang is essentially an expression language that you're going to use when customizing the look and feel and some of the server-side behavior of how mobs work. So Molang is essentially an expression language, which allows you to set different equations for typically things like animations and the like. So if you think about a mob with an arm, right? Like you've got this arm that's going to go back and forth like this. Well, there's like a mathematical equation that will position the different bones in that arm, based on whether it's flexing or contracting, essentially. And that's going to be a mathematical equation typically. So you can use Molang to access a number of the different properties about that particular entity and then factor them into equations so that, maybe the arm will flex quicker if it's healthier or something like that. Maybe that's not the best example, but you get the idea. You should understand Molang as an important ingredient for doing things like animations on top of Minecraft. Speaking of things like animations, the look and feel of a mob, it's configured by a number of different things on the resource side. So there's a core definition for the entity resource. There's this thing called render controllers, which can be used to implement certain behaviors about how textures swap and change. So for example, if you look at the cat mob inside of Minecraft, one of my favorite mobs, there's like 15 variants of different types of cats. And that's all configured by swapping out the different textures using a render controller. Of course, there's also your model, your animations, your animation controllers, and your textures. And typically, you're probably going to want to use Blockbench for actually editing those. Blockbench has some awesome tools for being able to configure your Molang expression or to set different timeline points for how animations should work. So it's a very flexible tool for doing a lot of that. And then, of course, audio is another important facet of being able to customize the sound and those kinds of things. We actually have an awesome video series, Making the Goblin Chef, that's linked on the bottom, from someone who's got a bit more experience in doing, Peter Chef, who's got more experience in building some really awesome looking mobs. So he takes you through the background and how to think about creating a mob, and it's a really great video that you should take a look at. But as I've shown before, you can also do some pretty cool things with just Blockbench by itself, even if you're not super well trained. At least you can get a good start in it. And that's what I love about Minecraft is you can do a little bit of coding, a little bit of art, a little bit of modeling. It's all part of the fun that I hope you will all enjoy as well. Okay, so let's just go ahead and dive into building and working with an entity and showing you some of the sites in creating your first custom entity on top of Minecraft. Okay, so what I am going to do is I am going to go to the browser, and I'm going to go to this website called mctools.dev like this. And this is a website that allows you to get started with building some simple things on top of Minecraft. I probably did most of the code on this website, and so apologies in advance if there's bugs and those kinds of things. But one of the ambitions for this website is to hopefully make it simpler and easier for folks to go create custom mobs on top of Minecraft. In our case, what we want to go do, carrying the camp theme forward, one of the things that you'll probably experience at a campfire is some ghost stories. which of course implies that campfires must have ghosts near them. So today what we're going to go build is a custom ghost. So on this website, I'm going to start with probably the closest analog to a ghost is the creeper. And so I'm going to use the creeper as my foundation for working on my ghost like this. And so let's just call this camp ghost like so. And we're going to go click OK to get started. And so this is going to go start a new project. It's going to be based on those samples from the Mojang Bedrock samples that repository that I showed in the previous intro presentation of all the different vanilla samples. And so we've got our campfire ghost here, and we can edit the different facets of this. And as you can see, there's like things like the model, which we can edit on the visual side, and then there's things like the type that we can edit on the behavior side of it. And you can see a lot of the different component states and the like. We have a number of different component groups for the different stages. Because it started from a creeper, we have all of the behaviors of a creeper that you're probably familiar with. Things like charging and exploding and the like. So we've inherited all those component groups. We have a ghost that now has who's a fan of exploding, let's say, and those kinds of things. But let's get started with customizing the visuals of our ghost, just to de-creeperify it. So one of the options I'm going to use here is to download a Blockbench model. And so what this will do is it'll download a BB model file, which is Blockbench's format for storing all of the customizations for a particular model inside of Blockbench. So I'm going to go open that up inside of Blockbench, and I clicked it. Let's see, it should probably pop up in just a moment. Like so. Let me just go find Blockbench. Should be right here. Here we go. Let me go close this down just real quick. Do this again one more time. And it should open inside of Blockbench. I'm going to just close it just to make absolutely sure. Oh, there we go. Okay, yeah, here we are. Okay, sorry about that. It's over in another tab. All right. It just was missing the tab. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do to make this a ghost, ghosts tend to float and not tend to walk. So sorry, creeper, we're going to be deleting your legs. You can see in the outliner side, we've got the body, we've got the head, and all these are the different elements of working on the creeper. So we're just going to go delete all those. And then we're just going to make this a little bit more ghost-like. I'm going to resize this. I'm going to hit the S key to go change the shape of this, and we're just going to make the head basically a little bit bigger. And then I'm going to select this interior part, which I guess is the body of the creeper. And we are going to go put this down a little bit, and let's just like resize it. That's not what I want, like so. And just resize it like this. We're not going to get super fancy. Obviously, if you're doing this for real, you can spend hours and hours and hours perfecting this. Since I only have about 10 minutes left, less than 10 minutes, we'll probably keep it a little quicker. Okay, so now we're done with our basic shape for it, and now we're just going to go paint it. Blockbench actually has some awesome tools for being able to, edit the image. So in this case, I'm just going to blow out I'm going to go, let's go to the saturation. I'm going to go blow out this, I'm going to desaturate it. And then I'm going to go adjust the contrast so that it's just a little bit. Oh, yeah, probably the brightness, just to amp it up to that ghostly. Let me just do that again. Sorry about that. All right, now it's this ghostly white. Okay, let me go back to the edit phase and just make sure that my UVs, these mappings of where the paint applies to a particular mob, are correct. So you can see that there's 2 UV maps for the different shapes of the mob. Okay, so now I'm just going to hit the M key to go select some of the texture that we've got. And I'm going to just go paste that and place, and I'm just going to paste this all over just so that our ghost has a number of different customizations like this. Let me just do this. So this is building our first mob, and I'm just, being a little heavy with the texturing, but let's just go do this like so. Okay, and then the final touch is I'm just going to select a region. I don't think ghosts have mouths. I don't know. We'll see. Your ghost can have a mouth. It's all cool. but let me just merge all the, oh, sorry. Let me merge this down first. Make sure everything is merged into our texture. Then I'll get rid of the mouth. So merge down. Hit M. Okay, copy, paste. All right, and there we go. Now the mouth is gone. Okay. The other interesting thing you should know, the body is a little bit too big. 1 pixel down. Okay. The other thing that you should know is that these specially named elements, the body and the head, Minecraft will tend to animate those respectively. So, when a ghost is looking at you, you'll see it'll look cool. Trust me. Okay. That's not what I want to do. Let's go hit File, Save. Okay. So now we've saved our BB model. And let's go back to our download folder, and you should see that, yes, the BB models. Now I'm just going to drag this back into mctools.dev, and it's going to go integrate it. And you can see what it's done here is it should have overridden the texture, so now it's got this ghost texture that we're looking at. So now we've got our basic ghost. Now the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go customize a little bit of the behavior of the ghost. And mctools has these basic editors for editing the events and the components and those kinds of things. It's still a work in progress. It's not perfect. Sometimes it can lead to configurations that don't quite work. So if you have feedback, leave comments in the GitHub. But in this case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the actions, and I'm going to go to the start exploding action, which is basically the event that will be run inside of Minecraft. And I'm just going to add an action that says when the start exploding behavior takes place, I'm going to go run a command that's going to go say boo scary like this. And we're just going to go run that and go from there. So now I'm ready to run this inside of Minecraft. I'm going to go download a flat world with packs and open this up inside of Minecraft. Let me go exit out of your world. So when you're working with mctools.dev, a way of working is that you can basically download a flat pack, an MC world file, which you heard about in the last session, with all of your content embedded inside of it, which makes it useful for trying out some simple things. If you want a more advanced workflow, you're going to want to save this project locally and iterate more rapidly. But certainly for live stream's sake, it's a good thing to go do. So here I am, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to go give myself, I'm going to summon our ghost like this. Okay, so you can see that we've got our custom camp ghost, and yeah, there you go. There's our little camp ghost. I'm going to go change it into survival mode like this. Survival, like so. And so now the ghost is going to come and attack me. And what you should say is, okay, see, when it's decided to start exploding, it said boo, scary, and all that kind of good fun stuff. Now the final touch, what is a camp experience without the sound of a ghost? I mean, the sound is really what makes a ghost, to be honest. So what I'm going to go do is I'm going to go to C projects like this and go to entities. Yeah, and I'm going to go download a sound effect that I added and go add this scary.ogg file as a new sound. Let me put my headphones on so I can enjoy the sound with you. And you can hear.
Ooh, scary.
Yeah, I'm clearly not very, my sound skills
are scary.
Almost as bad as my coding skills. All right, so we're going to go back into the camp ghost, and we're just going to come back to our action, and we're going to go to the start exploding. And we're going to change this command from that to play sound scary, and then just play that for all players. Now, there's a number of different ways you can actually go ahead and set the sound for a custom entity. mctools doesn't support all of them, but we'll be adding support soon to custom sounds, effects, and those kinds of things. So in this case, we've got our camp ghost and camp ghost with the most, and we're going to go work with this inside of Minecraft. And let's see if, let's go summon the camp ghost. All right, cool. All right, and then got to back up a little bit and game mode survival, like so. All right, so.
Ooh, scary.
That's horrible. Okay, well, that's just a quick overview of customizing our custom entity. Let me just take you a little bit on a tour of some other sites inside of mctools. As I mentioned, there's a whole bunch of different components that you can see inside of Minecraft. And inside of mctools, you can edit a lot of the different properties. So, this is the logic for how a mob targets something nearby. And you can see there's a whole bunch of different behaviors. In fact, this kicks off that start exploding when it comes across a different type of mob. So you can just see all the different, here's the health values that we could go crank up if we wanted to go crank up the damage level of them. So there's a lot of things here to go customize. We're trying to always make this a little bit simpler for folks in getting started with building entities on top of Minecraft. So that was just a quick run through of building entities on top of Minecraft and everything you can do on top of there. It is the most deep topic because entities are so important, but hopefully whether you're using the Blockbench entity wizard or whether you're using mctools or whether you're coding it by hand, at least creating some simple mobs is a great way to get started with building things on top of Minecraft and maybe the first stop in your journey working outside of Minecraft to go build some customizations and some add-ons for Minecraft. Going to questions, what's the most complicated thing you guys find making an add-on? That's a great meta question. I think the biggest complicated thing is that there are so many different systems. There's particles, there's features, there's entities, there's items, there's jigsaw structures, and they all have a lot of power to them. And it really helps to know a little bit about everything. And so I think what makes things complicated building an add-on is just that need to know, kind of a little bit of everything on top of Minecraft as you're building it. So jigsaw structures is probably the thing I would find is it's still in preview. It is so powerful, but you have to have this mental model for how you're building a jigsaw structure. I don't know that there's any way that we can make it simpler, but jigsaw structures are it takes some mental planning and all that kind of fun stuff to build an awesome jigsaw structure. Next question, are there any plans to build a Copilot type chatbot for building behavior packs? We've been doing some experimentation. We're kind of focused right now on just simplifying tools so that people can get started in building and customizing them so that you can tweak the health value for an entity just using a slider and those kinds of things. Lucy has the question, client items when? I get it. Yeah, we someday we'll probably have some, for example, client-side experiences, deeper experiences, maybe some client-side scripting and the like, but not in the short or medium term. And then next question, what's the difference between making an add-on versus making mods for Java Edition? If I compare the coding stuff, for as informal language. When you're building an add-on using supported like JSON formats for Java Edition, you're creating a data pack. And a data pack in a lot of ways is kind of similar to a behavior pack on top of Bedrock Edition. So there's a lot of similarities there. The JSON syntax will be different, significantly different at times. Sometimes it's only subtly different, which actually makes it a little harder to know where the differences are. But that can be very similar. There are a lot of communities that have built some awesome mod frameworks on top of Java Edition. They're not officially supported, but there are some rich APIs in Java for building custom mods for Java Edition. And those will tend to resemble a little bit the TypeScript APIs or the JavaScript APIs we've added in Bedrock Edition. So there's some similarities there, but typically in a lot of those mod experiences, the API sets are vast, even more vast than the JavaScript or TypeScript that we have on top of Minecraft. So there's some similarities at the outer level, but unfortunately, and for better or for worse, they're just a little bit different. So final question, are there any plans to make blocks that work like sorry, I can't quite see the question. I'll see if I can get to it. Are there any plans to make blocks that work like Amber? So that I don't know that I can necessarily understand what you mean by that. It's probably a me problem for sure. So I don't know how to answer that question. And then the final thing, how do you merge the entity and items to open it on the same world? If you use a tool like mctools.dev, you can certainly add, more items into this project and have a pack that integrates the two. I know that Giannis for the entity item and block wizard also added a new option so that you can merge multiple different creations together. Well, all right. That wraps up this session for everything on building custom entities inside of Minecraft. Thanks for attending. See ya.